Austin and I in this video are going to be answering a question from one of you, our viewers. And he actually called us and we decided to record the entire Zoom session and upload it here on the channel for everyone to benefit. So if you have a question that you want to ask us, go ahead and email me in the description below. You'll see that my email is there and we can get that uploaded. Today we're going to be talking to a young man who's actually turning 18 very soon and wants to get into real estate. And that's fantastic, wanting to get into real estate early. So in this video, we're going to give him our advice on the difficulties in financing, whether or not he has a job and if he has the money and all of that, getting into exactly if he can do the burst strategy and little tricks that we learned along the way to allow him to do this much more quickly than he even realizes, and even starting as soon as he hits 18. So go ahead and give this a watch. Keep in mind, I'm only going to be showing a portion of the actual video, and I'll be breaking it up a little bit into the different conversations that we had. So let's go ahead and get into it now.
Hey, so yeah, I was just wondering basically, how can I refinance at 18 years old, and also, how do I know what's a good deal and how much money to put into a house so it can add value to the house so I can appraise it?
All right. Well, actually, the whole refinancing section, I feel like Austin probably will have the best information on that, him being the realtor.
Yeah, I mean, first off, congrats. Starting young is one of the best things you can do in real estate investing. I bought my first house at 21, so I was later than what you're talking about. But the biggest challenge you're going to have here is just income. And so there's basically two ways that you can refinance a property. Especially like a strictly investment properties. One is going to be through a community lender who's going to be, they don't have these regulations they have to hit. So they're going to be a little bit more loose with their standards. It's going to be more relationship based. It might be more net worth based. Like when you start getting up into like the really high, like complicated types of files, they're not necessarily factoring a ton of income. However, they still want to make sure that there's some sort of income backing it up. So one of the biggest things that you're going to run into before I get to the second way of refinancing is you're likely going to want to find some sort of co-signer, somebody that has good credit and good income, whether that be a family member or a friend or a partner that you trust, something like that. And that was like my, pretty quickly I had to start doing that. And one of my best friends, Will, ended up being my first partner and stuff. He had a steady income. I was newly self-employed. So, my taxes basically didn't count for anything, but he had a really good job, a steady job. And so like the bank saw, I had the experience. He had the income. We both had the money. So it was, it was pretty good from that standard. So that's kind of like one way to do it is you could find a community bank. You could start a relationship. You got 2 years now to just like start, get deposits with them, start chatting with them, let them know the kind of educational stuff that you're doing. And then if you can have a partner or a co-buyer that has strong credit and things like that, that's also huge. Also start building your credit now, if it's, like little things that you can do. You can get a credit card secured by a bank account. You could do like, all of these kind of small things. There's ways nowadays where you can have your, depending on if you pay any bills yourself, like a cell phone bill or something, like you could get one in your own name, even if your family is still a part of it or something like that.
Cell phone bills add to credit?
There's one of the new things that some of the credit bureaus are doing is they are allowing you to add things like your utility bills and cell phones. So it's like pretty new that's happening. Like traditionally that's not a part of it and you have to request for it to happen. But that's the biggest things right now. If you can get and start building some confidence either with a community lender or get a co-buyer of some sort, somebody who's going to have income, because that's going to be your biggest hurdle coming out young. Now, if you have a job, like let's say you're not planning to go to college, you're going to have a job or even a part-time job that you can show is consistently doing stuff, you may even be able to do it, especially if the deal's good enough. So that brings us to our second way of doing it, which is your typical Fannie Freddie refinances. And so when I say that, I basically mean it's your pretty normal mortgage that you're going to get that is going to be like any mortgage broker can do it, pretty much any bank can do it. It's going to be bundled up, sold on the secondary market, like all mixed with stocks and stuff. So if you ever saw the movie The Big Short, this is what they're talking about. They basically originate your loan, put it with a bunch of other ones, bundle it together, sell it on the stock market, somebody else buys it, and then they service it. That has a lot of regulations that they need to check all the boxes for. So they don't have flexibility to say, oh, you don't make quite enough income or like whatever it may be. And the idea there is that you're going to want a story. So you want to make sure, especially when you're young, because they don't necessarily have regulations that say, oh, you need to have worked for 2 years. You can have just gotten a job. And that was like, for me, I had just gotten my first job out of college, and they were able to give me a loan. And so same kind of thing, like depending on what your situation is, if you want to, if you're actually going to be doing some sort of work, then like you can go into that in that way.
Yeah.
Now the other part of that is, for strict investment property, they're going to count, usually it's 75% of the income of that property towards your income. So if you have zero debts, theoretically, and I've had clients that have, they don't have a job, but they've got some investment properties and things like that, and then the deal is good enough with the cash flow that 75% of that cash flow covers the debt to income enough for them to purchase the property. So it's a little bit tricky. It has to be a really heavy cash flowing property for that to happen, but that is a potential there. Again, it's kind of tricky, so you're gonna wanna know a good lender that's like willing to deal with that tricky stuff, which I've got some for you for sure. But that's kind of the thing you want to do, is start building your credit now, because that's going to be a non-negotiable for any lender. They're going to want to see your credit. And then second, figure out if you can get a co-buyer of some sort, or figure out a way to start getting some income yourself, whether that be you actually go get a part-time job or something like that when you're ready to buy that property, or you find a property that's a good enough cash flower that it's going to cover the debt to income ratio needs that they're going to have. Which we'll probably do like a whole video on debt to income ratio, because that's like a 45-minute conversation there.
So, okay. I don't know if you're raising your hand because you wanted to speak.
Yeah, go for it, man. That was a lot coming at you.
Basically, I mean, this is a quick thing. It's like what you should really take from this is your age is not the factor, other than being 18, of course, legally able to sign a contract. I mean, it's not really a factor. Even with me, when I first started in real estate, luckily I had a job that helped me with this, but as I've talked about on the channel, I didn't have any money. And as far as credit, I mean, I was still kind of just figuring that out and building that. Are you in a position where you, well, I guess we could say, like, if you don't have a credit card and all that, if you want to build your credit score very fast, which you can do, and your parents may be okay with this, if they have a credit card they've had for a long time, they can make you an authorized user of the credit card. This will technically give you a credit card, but you don't need it. Just cut it up. It doesn't matter. You're never going to use it, but it puts it on your credit report, and now you gain all of that history. So you'll have 20 years of credit history as a 16-year-old. So it really is a huge boost to your credit. But if, even despite that, I would recommend, just as Austin said, the secured credit card you can pull out. If you have, I guess, a cell phone and all that, you may then want to put it in your name if your parents are not paying for it, depending on your own situation, which you don't have to disclose. But, that's just something. And as far as a co-buyer, I mean, realistically, co-signing with parents, is that maybe on an investment property in his own personal name, is that a possibility or not really?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was, and what Devin said with the credit card, having a parent or somebody else that you trust adding you to a credit card, I literally did that. That was one of the first things I had to do at buying a house at 21, and I'm getting ready to do a refinance like this week. The one thing to remember is just make sure they don't hold a balance on it. I just called my mom up like preemptively, because my parents are in like Key West, like, having a lot of fun. And I was like, hey, make sure you pay your Discover card. It usually does. But I was like, I got a refinance coming up. Like, I want to make sure that the balances are low.
That's very key. Don't do this if they have like tons of debt. It'll actually be the reverse. So if they have a credit card balance that's really high, it'll impact your utilization ratio, which means that your credit score will drop. So don't do this unless they actually have a...
But that's a really good way of doing it, So...
you guys done? Can I ask a question real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
So I've been investing in my parents' name on my parents' stock account. They have a separate account for me, and the whole point of them keeping it in their name was so I can get more financial aid for college. So would you recommend them transferring that into my name before college or after college?
So I'm not sure that your stock is actually going to have any bearing on this. So we are treading into a territory of giving you financial advice, which we can't really do as we're not certified to do so. But if we were in this situation, me personally, I'm not seeing what in your mind. What is the point of transferring in your name? Are you trying to build credit or trying to have that money in your name? Is that what it is?
Yeah, I was talking to another investor, and they were saying you need to have basically like some assets in your name. So I was saying that maybe I can transfer my stock into my name. So when I go to buy a house, well, I have this X amount of money in the stock market.
Cash reserves. I ran into this all the time. Actually, I didn't have any money in my own name, and I had to do this whole other thing, was essentially where I put my name on someone's bank account in order to count that money as mine. Essentially, a partner of mine. Have you heard any or would you recommend what he's doing for yourself or a client?
Yeah, anytime, again, like lending is always going to be a story. You're telling a story about yourself. And so the longer you can show, like, yeah, I've had this money for a long time. I've showed that like every year I make money more, and there's some tax considerations in that, right? Are you reporting gains you have? Are your parents, like those are kind of the questions that you want to ask. Financial aid with colleges as well, like, ask the question, and that's something to like start looking into, is like most of the time they're going to consider a lot of your parents' income and stuff like that as well. I was a while ago that I was in college, but I'm pretty sure it's relatively similar. So, like I was in a position where for college specifically, there was a lot of aid that I didn't qualify for just because my parents made enough that I didn't really qualify for it. So you might be going through like pains now and like jump through hoops, and you might not even qualify for it later based off of, like parents or something like that. But it's a good idea to get assets into your name. Again, you're going to be reporting gains towards taxes and stuff like that. And that's probably your biggest thing that will be a consideration of that, more so than just having an asset in your name.
Well, as a factor of cash reserves, just keep in mind that you will need, when you do the BRRRR strategy, which I believe you mentioned in your email to us that you wanted to do, you're going to need, you can correct me if I'm wrong, this was 6 months of reserves for the subject property that you're refinancing, doing a cash out refinance on, and then 2 months of reserves for every other property you own. So if you have no cash in your name, your initial BRRRR strategy deal is going to be relatively impossible. So putting it in your name for that reason, let's say you do not have, and when I say 6 months, by the way, this is of a mortgage payment. So your required debt obligation, you need 6 months of that for the property you're buying, and 2 for every other one. So that would be a reason that I would do it, because I ran into that. I ran into that all the time where I didn't have the cash reserves, because as I mentioned, I started with no money. So using my friend's bank account is the way I did it. The stock idea of yours might be what you could do it. All right. Cool. Did you have any other questions regarding that?
No, those were all my questions. Oh, my last one was, how do you know which parts like to add value to the house? Is it like,
oh, I think we lost him. So, oh, there he is. Hey, Brett. So go ahead. What was your question? You were saying what parts of the house to add value to?
Yeah, like what parts do you add value to, say, appraise for more? Like the house appraises for more. Like, I wouldn't want to just add value to like any part. Like, are there specific parts of the house to fix so they appraise?
So that's it for this segment of the video. I will be uploading the other ones very soon. We talk about contractors. We talk about a lot of different other renovation styles and real estate and such. So if you like this kind of content, definitely leave a like, subscribe, and if you want to be hosted on this channel, feel free to let me know, and we'll go ahead and post this up in our conversations with Austin and I. And I'll talk to you all very soon.